Okay, so we said evolution is biological change over time. But the question is, how does it work? How does it happen? So we've talked a lot about what it is, but we haven't really talked about how it works. Okay, so we said evolution is biological change over time. What we want to know now is, how does it work? So we know what it is, but we can know what lots of things are. It doesn't help us much if we don't know what they are. Natural selection is the mechanism of evolution. It's how evolution works. So have you heard who here has heard the term natural selection before? Okay. In Mr. Klein's class? Did you have Mr. Klein? Okay. I know he talks about evolution. He does an evolution unit. Olivia, you?
What?
Have you heard the term natural selection before?
I think.
Okay. In Mr. Klein's?
Yeah.
Okay. Gabby, did you have Mr. Klein? Well, yes, you all had him a while ago. Okay. Okay. Destiny, did you have this in middle school?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fruit Loop.
One question.
And we are skipping around in the slides. So these are the pretty simple slides at the end of your stuff. So, natural selection, the very basics. This is how evolution happens. All populations have natural variation. Have you observed natural variation in a population? Have you measured it? Have you graphed it? Have you charted it?
Saw it.
Yes, such as? Huh?
Saw my whole life.
Well, what about in this class? Have you documented variation in human populations?
Yeah.
Yes. What did you document?
Hunter never comes to school.
That's not variation in human population.
Well, like,
You did a variation lab. What characteristics?
The deer.
You did a variation lab. Did you measure deer? I don't remember that.
About your width of your
Human. Okay, arm span, height, pinky length, wrist circumference. You documented variation among humans. We could go out into a wild population and we could document variation. Variation in leg length, ear length, heart rate, digestive enzymes produced in the guts. There are all kinds of variations. Not all of it is visible from the outside. So all populations, all groups of organisms of a single species have some variation. How could you sum that up in just a few words? How could you sum up all populations have natural variation in just a few words? Everything is kind of different. We could say every one, but we might be talking about dandelions. We might be talking about oak trees. We might be talking about little amoeba out in the pond. Amoeba, they're little single-celled organisms. They're microscopic. You can't see them with the naked eye. They look like a little clear bag, Ziploc bag of jelly with little stuff in them, and they like along, and they eat other things by wrapping themselves around the other thing and just sort of absorbing them. Okay, so everything is kind of different would be a decent way to sum that up. So
How do you type?
you don't type, you write. There's no typing in this app. There is no typing in this app. The second point is this. The environment presents challenges to survival and to reproduction. It ain't easy, which would be a decent three-word summation. In the other class we used life is tough. The environment presents challenges. Here, we'll write. Life is tough. Now, for humans in the industrialized world today, it's a whole lot easier than it's ever been at any point in human evolutionary history. So 50,000 years of human history, and let me ask this. How many of you on your way to school this morning were stalked by a large carnivore intent on eating you? Mountain lion? Black bear? Panther? Oh yeah, we do occasionally get black bears in Columbiana County. Wolf? Pack of wolves
I have a wolf.
chase you? Did you in the last 30 days have to dig up, gather, or kill every single bite of food that you put in your own mouth?
It is hunting season.
It is hunting season. But if you have used flour
Not yet.
or, it's small game. Small game's in.
Those
Hunting season opened October 15th, not deer.
No, I was saying I haven't.
Okay. So, you didn't have to flee from predators who were intent on eating you. You didn't have to gather by hand every single calorie that you put in your mouth. Basically, in terms of the long view of human history, no matter what's going on in your life, life's pretty easy for you at this point. It doesn't always feel that way. I'll be the very first to admit that. Life is tough. So for most organisms, everything out there wants to eat them. Now, for humans in, right here, the ground under our feet, in 1790, that was not the case. There were panthers, packs of wolves, black bears. So yeah, for some parts of human history, life was not as easy as it is currently. Is that individuals tend to produce more offspring than will survive. Individuals tend to produce more offspring than will survive. How could we? Well, here, let's think of a couple examples. How many of you have seen a dandelion gone to seed?
You.
Awesome. Could be, what, a couple hundred? Could be 1,000 little seeds on there. What are each of those seeds? Or a seed? What are they to the dandelion? They're its babies. Yeah, they're its offspring. So, of those couple hundred baby dandelions, or future potential baby dandelions, how many do you think actually make it? Maybe. Maybe some dandelions get lucky. But of hundreds of seeds, maybe only a few land on actual soil and can germinate. Maybe some get eaten. I know they don't seem like much food, but to a mouse, they are still food. Seeds tend to be a good source of nutrition. We eat a lot of seeds. Wheat is a seed. Corn is a seed. There tend to be a lot more individuals created than actually survive and live to grow up. So you remember me talking about my fish squeezing days, squeezing fish for eggs and sperm? It's a story that tends to stick out in people's minds. After we squeezed the fish for eggs and sperm, we got to take the product of those eggs and sperm back out to Mosquito Lake. And we would get the bed of a full-size pickup truck loaded with 1-by-1 boxes. And inside each of those boxes was a very heavy-duty plastic bag with a very heavy-duty rubber band on the top. And when you opened that up and looked in that bag, it looked like black jelly that was just moving. And in that 1-by-1-by-1 box were, 1,000 walleye about this long. They called them 2 eyes and a wiggle. And we would take those boxes, we would line them up in the bottom of the boat. We had a big clear plastic tube like this. We would stick one end down into the walleye bag and the other end down into the lake and run that boat. And those little walleye would get the ride of their life as we created a siphon and they went, because 1 minute they're like happily swimming around in a cardboard box inside a plastic bag, and the next minute they're abducted by aliens, sucked up a tube, and deposited 4 feet down under the surface of the water in Mosquito Lake. So in a couple hours, we would put, 1 million walleye into Mosquito Lake.
Would they die?
No, we had to acclimate the water. That's a good question. We actually had to add lake water to the bags and let them sit. And there was a whole instruction sheet on timing, and you had to wait this long, and you had to, because that would shock them, and that could kill some of them. And the goal was to get as many of them as you could alive into the lake. Now, in that was usually May, we did the stocking. One May afternoon, we stick 1 million walleye into Mosquito Lake Does that mean that there are 1 million walleye there come August or come the next year? No, because I'll tell you what, when you are this big, everything is going to kill you. So we had to get that hose 4 feet down into the lake because little seabirds would just follow the boat. They would literally follow the wake of the boat and just sit on the surface of the water, and anything that came to the top, they're gone. You're done. Game over. So of those millions of walleye that we would put in a couple hours, if you would come back a month later, maybe there's 500,000. Maybe half of them make it a week. Maybe a quarter of them make it a month. By the next summer, when we've got walleye that are now fingerling size, they're maybe 6 inches long, maybe 1,000 of those are still around. Maybe a couple thousand. So the ones that actually make it all the way to getting big enough to reproduce, to get caught up in 10 years, 5 years, and squeezed for eggs and sperm and pass on their genes, very few. Very few. Now, this is not so much true for humans anymore. Well, first of all, let's sum up number 3 in a few words. I got a great one for you. Anybody else want to give it a shot? Mine is really grim, but it's only 2 words.
What?
Lots die.
That was a B. I was like, what?
You could say many will die. Many will die. Sounds like the trailer for a horror film for walleye, which it is. Oh, yeah.
They just say, hey, there's a
Big, giant walleye will eat, or like fingerling walleye will eat 2 eyes and a wiggle. I mean, when those walleye are this big, a bluegill can eat a walleye, which you hear that and you're like, no, bluegill don't eat walleye, duh. Well, yeah, when the bluegill is 6 inches long and the walleye is 1.5 inches long, guess what? The bluegill can eat the walleye. And bluegill are bug eaters for the most part.
Have you
But
ever been to the spillway?
I have. At Pymatuning. Lots die. Many will die. However you want to say it, a whole lot more organisms get produced, get conceived, than survive. Now, this is not so much the case for humans in the Western world. In the U.S., in Europe, in Canada, in a lot of parts of Mexico that are more urbanized, people have access to good health care. In Japan, in China, in a lot of parts of Asia, people have 2 or 3 kids. They expect to raise 2 or 3 kids to adulthood. That was not always the case. Even if you go back in your own family histories, my great-grandpa was one of 17 children born to his parents, and I think 11 of them survived to adulthood. And if you go back through the family genealogy, like there was a pair of twins who died at 9 months and 13 months. There's another child who dies at 2, and that was just kind of common. I mean, if you read stories of people, traveling from the east out to the frontier, people buried their children along the way because little kids are more susceptible to everything, and at one point in human history, this was very true for humans as well. More offspring were produced than would grow up. So everything's a little bit different. Life is tough, and lots will die. So let's look at the last point of natural selection. Individuals with mutations or features that have some advantage for survival tend to pass on more of their genes. What's a mutation? Is it? You're one of my blue-eyed mutants. I'm a green-eyed mutant. Gray-eyed, whatever we call them. Well, that's a mutant. A mutant is any living thing with a mutation. A mutation is...
Characteristics?
No.
A change in a gene that may change how an organism looks like.
Okay, a mutation is just a change in a gene that changes how you look or function. So being extra tall might be as a result of a mutation. A mutation could be beneficial. There are people whose bodies process oxygen more efficiently. We talked a little bit about this. Like, those people make better athletes because their bodies do a better job of transferring oxygen to their muscles. That's a mutation. You know, they're mutants, just like I'm a green-eyed mutant. You know, those are mutations. But if you've got a mutation that somehow gives you an edge, maybe you're one of those baby walleye, and you have some mutation that means your little tail fin is unusually powerful, which means you're a little bit faster, which means when that hungry whatever comes after the little pack of inch-long walleye, you swim just a little bit faster. Woo-hoo! Woo, that was close.
Dumbo's.
And yeah, Dumbo's a mutant, but you know, let's not get into cartoon characters because we could spend all day there. If you've got some kind of mutation that gives you an edge, you tend to pass on more of your genes. So how do you pass on your genes? You put them in a bag, you send them to Goodwill. Ha 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 ha. Wrong genes. Okay.
Having kids.
Having kids. Having lots of kids. Having as many kids as you can possibly have. Producing offspring out the whiz-waz. Woo! Offspring, 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 offspring. I am not offering this as life advice to any of you. Don't reproduce yet. And for humans in Western societies, there are some other limitations on reproduction in terms of economics. The more babies you have, the more likely it is that some of them are going to grow up and pass on your genes. So, those walleye, that mother walleye produces in one squeezing probably a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 eggs. How many of her 1,000 potential babies are ever going to survive to grow up and maybe go on to pass on her genes? Well, if they're really good and they're really fast, maybe a couple this season and maybe a couple next season. So maybe that one mother walleye has, she gets 1% of her offspring who survive and who pass on her genes. Her genes live on after her. How would you sum that up in a few words? Individuals with a mutation or feature that have some advantage for survival tend to pass on more of their genes. Tell you what, we're not actually going to sum that one up today. And I'm not allowed to give you any homework tonight because it's family first night. Yeah, because I usually give you such an unwieldy burden of homework.
I know.
Yeah, it's really
So it
really
always takes me like all night.
rough. I know how hard you work. Okay, so we will stop there. Tomorrow, we're going to do an activity, and I'm still figuring out how to recruit extra bodies. We're going to do an activity that demonstrates these 4 ideas. And I can't say you have homework, but gee, I'd love it if you'd think a little bit about how to sum up that last point, and you could do that in the 5 minutes we have left.